Hi everyone. Thank you for joining us once again for another session. We're going to have a very interesting conversation with Mr. Anders. He's going to take us through this topic, global citizenship in praxis. So as you join us, please tell us where you're joining us from in the chat section. If you have any questions, please feel free to send them in the Q&A section. So, Mr. Anders, the stage is yours. Please welcome him with send some reactions. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Maureen. I just want to check that you can hear me.
Yes, you're very audible.
That's good. Thank you so much. I am honored to be here with you, and I'm really glad to get this opportunity to tell you about the book that I have co-written and also edited, and which is based on the experiences that we've had here at the Rysensten Gymnasium in Copenhagen, Denmark, with regards to establishing and also running a global whole school global citizenship program with the purpose of educating global citizens. So basically what I will be doing is that I will be taking you through the program as it is, which is also which corresponds with the content of the book, and then also tell you about then first of all what does it consist of, and then secondly also considerations about how we formed the program, how we have implemented the program, and how it works in what difficulties we experienced and we are still experiencing when considering the context that we are working within. And this, as I said, all corresponds also to the content of the book. So this presentation of what we're doing, both the description but also the critical view of what we're doing here at Rysensten, is actually also a short presentation of the content of the book. So global citizenship at Rysensten has been translated into a book which is called Global Citizenship in Praxis, and it's out on multilingual matters. And there's a link also in the PowerPoint if you would be interested in seeing the book or in buying the book.
Hi. I'm sorry. Your presentation has stopped showing. So if you can share your screen once again.
I share the screen once
Yeah.
again. Yes.
Yes. Just
All right.
share your presentation again.
Right.
Sorry about that.
It's okay. There we are. Think it's working again?
Yeah, now we're good.
Yeah, okay. So it's the book is out on multilingual matters, and there's a link if you want to check it out, even buy it there. And just to tell you briefly about the interest that we had from the publishers, it was because they have experienced multilingual matters as an expertise in publishing books about global citizenship, cultural understanding, so on and so forth. But most of the literature that they have published have been based on theoretical work, political work, so on. They have, in their own words, they haven't published very much about global citizenship in praxis, how to actually teach it, how to form a whole school program. So the interest from the publishers was based on the fact that this was simply lacking. And so we called the book Global Citizenship Education in Praxis, because this is what we know about. We are, of course, we're also knowledgeable about the theories behind teaching global citizenship in praxis, but mostly if we are in any ways experts, we are experts on how to teach it in praxis. And then we call it pathways for schools, because the idea is that this is not the only way, of course, to do it. I think it's very important to stress that if you as a school want to work with global citizenship, you cannot just one-to-one copy a program from another school or another country. So just a little bit about myself. My name is Anders Schultz, and I am the head of our Global Citizenship program here at Rysensten High School. I have been working with teachers and school leaders on 5 different continents because this is also part of our program that we are partnering with schools from 16 different countries. And as part of the program, then I have been brought into contact with these school leaders and teachers, and I have learned immensely from their views on global citizenship and also on education in general. And because of our program here at Rysensten, I have also been asked to do many different presentations, both online and in presence, in different countries, and also, of course, here in Denmark. Originally, before taking the position as the head of our Global Citizenship program, I was a teacher of history and physical education, but I did spend also some time living in Egypt and writing about the Middle East, which also laid the foundation for my interest, and I suppose also competences within the field of intercultural understanding and also global citizenship. I am also the CEO of Nordic Teaching, which is a company working with to try to bring the best ideas, the best practices of the Danish approach to teaching, or the Nordic approach to teaching, both within the field of global citizenship, but also just in education in general, to other countries, especially to Southeast Asia. Probably because the differences between the Danish approach to teaching and the approach in Southeast Asia is quite substantial, which is why we have experienced an interest from Southeast Asia, but also that Denmark has quite a significant interest also the other way around. But coming to the Global Citizenship program at Rysensten High School, you could say that the core of the program is that we have 14, 15, 16 different partner schools, depending exactly on how you count them. And you can see here on the map where they're situated. So basically they're spread out across the globe. And this is by no means a coincidence. This has been our wish from the beginning, that we would have as many countries and regions, and thereby also national cultures represented in our program. So all of our classes or cohorts in Denmark, we work with a cohort class system so that the students will stay with their group of students for all the 3 years of high school. They are working with a certain partner school, a specific partner school, which they are brought into contact with quite early on in their during the first year of high school. So, for example, our A cohort will be specializing in Argentina, our B in Madrid, and C in Cairo in Egypt. And this has all kinds of implications for the class, which I will get back to, because it very much sets the stage for how they are taught, or at least for the perspective with which they are. With which the teachers focus on their different respective subjects. It is important for me to stress, now that we're talking about establishing a program like this, that there's no, not as far as I know at least, no central place that you can call up and say, I would like to have 2 different partner schools in China and 1 in South Korea and so on. So we had to find these partner schools using our own network, using our board of directors, using teachers, using friends of the school, and so on. Then eventually it became easier because we built a reputation for being an international and global-oriented high school, and by that we also found some schools coming to us asking if we would like to partner with them. But it is hard work to find partner schools around the globe, but I cannot stress how important it is that you have these collaborations, because even if you want to, and even if you can get quite a certain amount of the way, a certain distance of the way to understanding cultures in other countries and regions of the world, there's really no substitute for working with partner schools and real people, meeting them up close and personal. So for me, if possible, partnering with schools from other countries is really the right way to go about working with global citizenship and also cultural understanding, which is of course very closely connected. Of course, I know that it's not possible for all schools, and online collaborations can also work. But is it possible? Then I would really emphasize how important that is. So the Global Citizenship Program at Rüssenstein, to understand how we work with this, and I will get back to also the importance of this and later on. But Rüssenstein High School or Gymnasium is in many ways, or at least legally speaking, we are a normal Danish high school. We're working under the same laws and the same national curricula that all other high schools in Denmark are. But at the same time, the Ministry of Education, they have accepted that we also have a special focus on global citizenship. They have actually granted us a permission to choose our students, at least some of them, based on their intercultural and international competencies. And therefore, at Rüssenstein, we actually work with two different curricula in all different subjects. We have one subject from given by the ministry or formulated by the ministry, and then we have a global citizenship curriculum, which we have formulated. And basically, this curriculum is based on three different categories of knowledge, competences, and behavior attitudes, so that we think of it as a progressive development that the students go through, that they will start by being more knowledgeable about the world, which comes from the fact of, hopefully is nourished by the fact that here at Rüssenstein, all our teachers will work with a global outlook to a much larger degree than at other high schools. So from the knowledge will hopefully also grow competencies, which will also be nourished by the personal meetings with their partner school students, because these competencies, as we understand them, mostly have to do with being able to interact with people who come from different cultural backgrounds. And then in the end, there's also humble political hope that this will also influence their behaviors and attitudes, so that they are open to the fact that we are, and more than open, they even accept the fact that we are on this globe and we share this globe together, and it's only together that we can solve our shared problems, such as the climate crisis, such as refugee crisis, such as global inequality, so on and so forth. And we hope that they will take this with them also when they leave here. But our teachers, they are obliged to follow this curriculum just as much, or not just as much, but they are obliged to follow this curriculum as they are also obliged to follow the curricula from the ministry. So for our students to understand how we actually do this, and also for our teachers and outsiders to understand how we work with this, we have created a GCP Global Citizenship Program Metro. And the idea is here that being a normal high school, then we cannot it's not possible for us to spend all the time working with the Global Citizenship Program. So we will kind of drift in and out of Global Citizenship Education, at least within the traditional subjects. So that, for example, the English language or history, modern history, it's not possible for those subjects to all of the time or invest all the time that they have in working with global citizenship. Sometimes they're working with the more traditional themes of modern history in Denmark or of math. But often they turn their perspective to global citizenship. And the way we have explained this is to say that from the GCP curriculum, we've taken the base, the most basic of taking the competences, and we've tried to translate them into three huge chunks of human traits, perspectives on the world, and competences. So we call that global vision as one. Another one is assessment, which is not a very good translation, to be honest, but it would be more correct to call it that the students will take, they will take take a political position, and not only ride the waves of change, but also try to change them whenever possible, if they think that that is the right way to go about it. And then it's very important for us that our students also have a self insight into themselves, or that they are reflecting on their own behavior. And the idea is then that once you follow the metro, then you get off at certain stops. If you get up at the blue stops, then that will be cross-curricular activities. So that will be activities that we have planned here from my office, that being the central office of the Global Citizenship Program. That will, for example, be an introduction to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. It will be introduction to cultural understanding, which I will get back to. So these are all cross-curricular, and they will, once you get off at these stops, will hopefully strengthen either the competences that you see with global vision, or the competences that you see with the red line being assessment. And then you can also get off at the Trivial Pursuit stops, which I point to now, meaning that you actually get off at the traditional subjects. So the traditional subjects, as I told you before, they are obliged to work with the Global Citizenship Program. So the idea is here that the traditional subjects cannot all of them handle all the competences that we've put into the Global Citizenship curriculum, but together they can handle all of them. And so the idea is that once you go through the whole metro here, you hopefully come out on the other side being not a fully finished global citizen, because you will never be a fully finished global citizen. But you will probably, hopefully, have taken important steps in that direction, and even more important, you will also be motivated to keep taking steps in that direction after leaving us at Rysenstein. And then, of course, the green is kind of the beyond the curriculum, or extracurricular activities, which is, for example, facilitated voluntary projects, which I will also get back to. To support all of this, we also have a progression plan. The progression plan states what we're doing with the blue cheeses here, as you see, or the blue stops. So this is an explanation, again, formulated from a central at this office, or with teachers working with me, teachers and students actually working with me, to formulate how we will actually go about doing these short courses of global citizenship, short cross-curricular courses. And before then, sorry, I'll just see here. I'll just dive into this. And just to tell you a little bit about then how we work with the cross-curricular courses, and tell you a little bit more about the content. It is, as I told you before, we have a course focusing on the UN and human rights, a short course, but it's one of the first courses one of the first cross-curricular courses that the students will meet once they start at Rysenstein High School. And it's based on UN, a basic understanding of what is the UN actually, and what do we talk about when we talk about human rights, and what are the 17 SDGs. We by no means claim that they will have a profound understanding of that, but it will give them a short introduction, so that they can, an introduction that they can use through their 3 years of high school, as they get more knowledgeable about the UN and human rights and the 17 SDGs. It's a very important introductory course for us. Also, another course which is extremely important for us, and which is actually split in 4 different smaller courses, is cultural understanding. And basically, to understand what we try to do here is try to lay out the foundation, first of all, for their meeting their partner school students who will come and visit them typically during their second year of high school, and they will stay with them because our program is homestay based. So our students will welcome students from South Korea, from the United States, from Egypt, from Uganda, hopefully, and to try to prepare them for this visit, and also try to prepare them for when they go abroad to visit their partner school students. We have established this cultural understanding program, and we have, of course, many different materials, use many different materials. But just to let you know the basic idea of what we're trying to do, I think this small illustration serves the point very well. The idea that you, as culture A, is the only visible thing, or the only visible trait for you when looking at culture B, being the partner school students, will be the behaviors. And often, and we've seen this before, you misunderstand the students from the partner school countries, because you can only see their behaviors. You cannot see their attitudes, underlying attitudes, assumptions, beliefs, and so on. And when you evaluate, assess, or even judge them, it will often be based on your own attitudes and so on. And by teaching our students about cultural understandings, we have actually experienced that their meetings have become much better. Because at first, when we started the program, we worked from quite a naive, I think I can honestly say this now, a naive point of understanding that it was enough just to send our students into the world, and then they would return less prejudiced. That happened to some, to a lot, but others went back and were even more prejudiced because they were not prepared to see and experience people and cultures who were different than themselves. So very, very important for them. And also important for us to stress that we have taken no academic standpoint in this, because you probably, most of you know that there's this discussion about how to understand culture. Can we understand it through the descriptive cultural model, a concept where culture is something that we have? Culture becomes action, it's very static, and we operate with generalizations. Can we understand it like this? Or do we have to understand it as via the complex cultural concept, where culture is something that we create, where we're looking more at uniqueness, at at how dynamic cultures are? And the way we understand it is that there are things that can be learned from the descriptive cultural concept. Myself, I'm married to a woman from Colombia, and of course there are things when I go to Colombia that I can see that are different from Denmark. For me, it goes without saying, and it is important for our students also to know about this once they go abroad or once they have visitors. But of course, if you overdo this, then you also overgeneralize. And that's what we don't want them to do. So we tell them, yes, we can study, we can read about other cultures, but once you're there, once you have the up close and personal meeting, then you have to be aware that there's also uniqueness and individualism, that the culture that you see in front of you is not necessarily exactly the same that you've written about, and that the people that you meet from other cultures, so to speak, they are also individuals. But of course, when we work with the descriptive model, we have found Erin Meyer, whom some of you probably know, to be quite quite constructive in facilitating a dialogue about the differences that we find. And some of the differences that she postulates they are, of course, maybe she's overdoing them, but I also think it's, as long as you don't use her material as the truth, but mostly use them as a point of as a starting point for conversation, I think they work very, very well. And then, of course, you have the actual cultural meeting, which for us is the most important thing, and based, as I said, on homestay experiences. And it's incredible what the students gain from this, the knowledge that they will have about people from other cultures, and mostly also the friendships that they form during their visits. It is quite amazing. And then about the GCED, how we teach that in the traditional subjects, just to let you know, because that's probably one of the things that I have understood to be quite different from other countries. That even though we are, as I said, a normal Danish high school, and we are obliged to follow the rules and regulations and the curricula of the Danish Ministry of Education, it still leaves quite a lot of freedom to our teachers, because Danish curricula are based mostly on competences. For example, the history curriculum, which I use to teach history, modern history, basically states 8 or 10 basic competences: the ability to read and understand the historical source material and to analyze it in a critical way, for example. So these are quite broad, and that leaves quite a lot of freedom to the Danish teachers. And therefore we can also tell them, you need to use your subject to understand the world as a whole, but also to focus in on this partner school country that your cohort has been given. So, for example, in history, we tell our teachers to focus on modern history of the partner school countries and regions. In English, Danish language, they are obliged to read excerpts at least, but hopefully also whole books from the most important authors of the partner school countries. In science, the students are studying the most important sources of energy supply in the partner school countries. And in geography, they're studying the effects of climate change in our respective countries. These are just examples, and it's also important to state that we're not only working with the partner school countries. Of course, history to help form global citizens is they will also, their part, or history's part in forming a global citizen, will also be to form their understanding of modern global history, the relationship between the most important political players on the international scene, and so on and so forth. But there is a very strong focus on the partner school countries. And when it comes to the extracurricular activities, which we find to be extremely important, because this is also what we want with our students, we want them to be motivated to take action. And because for us, a global citizen is not just a pipe smoking professor who's very knowledgeable about the world, or who flies around meeting other diplomats. A real global citizen is also one who not only understands his or her, whatever it may be, position in the world, but also tries to make a difference. And what we have found with our students is that they are very motivated, but they also sometimes need a little push, because they are busy and they are focusing on their exams, they're focusing on their social life, they're focusing on many things. I think that's a worldwide phenomenon that young people today are extremely busy. So what we have tried to do here is to facilitate voluntary work. For example, we've started a collaboration with Plan International, and so it has been the school originally who formalized this collaboration. But then from this starting point, we have the students have taken over, and now they are each year facilitating or managing donations that we that we give to 50 partner school children or school children in Uganda, which we support through their school education. And this is done by the students. So basically here, the point is that we facilitate a structure, a framework for the students, and then they take over from there. And then let me just go back and tell you a little bit about how this program was actually implemented. Because where we are now is we've come a long way, but it has not been easy. Because as I will also get back to later on, not all the stakeholders wanted this from the beginning. And I can also see from this the theme of the conference that this is also what we're talking about, that there are outside and even inside factors that sometimes work against facilitating global teaching of global citizenship. So the whole idea of a whole school global citizenship program dates back to 2011. At that time, the concept was developed by teachers and leadership at Rysensten Gymnasium, and the first global citizenship curriculum was developed. Then in 2012, the first partner school collaborations were established, and Rysensten teachers were visiting partner schools. And we also established a whole school Global Citizenship Day, which we still have. And we use this as kind of a day to mark the importance of the Global Citizenship Program. So 1,200 students all together with experts from outside, with documentaries from our own students, all to celebrate our Global Citizenship Program and to let our senior students hand over the torch to the younger generations. Then in 2015, we started teacher-to-teacher observation of GCED teaching, because there was quite a lot of some teachers were quite worried about teaching with a global citizenship focus. They thought maybe they were not doing well enough. And then we thought, well, we can ask for help from the outside, and we've done that plenty many times, but we can also let our teachers observe each other, because actually at that time they were all, some of them were already experts in teaching this. So we opened up the doors as management. We forced them to open up the doors, and they could observe each other and give feedback on what they saw in the respective classrooms. Then we also started, which I think has been it's been really important, that we started putting up artifacts of GCED symbols, so to speak. We put up global citizens, Nelson Mandela, Malala, and so on the walls, to kind of to show with the physical presence of these people as a physical manifestation of the metaphysical ideas we were working with. Because it's really important for the students that it's all around them all the time, and that they feel that the culture, the environment here is supporting their development as global citizens. Not only did we put up these photos and short excerpts of speeches and so on from global citizens, we also established a place for gifts from our partner schools and so on. So in different ways, we made it very, very visible at the school that we are a global citizenship school. And we started also our Model United Nations, Rysensten International. So we again let our students organize this, and then we invited students from our partner schools. And this is now a huge success, and very much at the heart of what we're doing, because every year in April, when we host the Global Citizenship Model United Nations, we have around 200 students, 150 to 200 students visiting from our partner schools. And that in that way, it also really comes to life, the program at that time. In 2020, during the COVID pandemic, the UGEN network was established. UGEN is the United Global Education Network. So we had 20 to 25 schools from all across the globe, our own partner schools, but also newcomers. And we started doing these online meetings and conferences discussing different ideas of global citizenship, but also of handling student problems and of different ways of teaching. So basically bringing students, teachers, and school leaders together from the whole world to try via speeches, presentations, but also just the sharing of ideas between practitioners to better the way that we teach in general, and specifically when it comes to Global Citizenship Program. And then in 2023, we published our Global Citizenship in Praxis in English. It had earlier, it was out in Danish in a somewhat different version. I find the English version to be much the best and the sharpest. And just a few points about also how much it actually how important it is in our organization. We have chosen that whole leg of our leadership group, management group, is actually devoted to global citizenship, and this is why I am part of the management as at the strategic level as one of only 4 people. And let's jump to we don't have that much time left, but just to get back also then to the content of the book, that further, not only will you in the book find this introduction to the Global Citizenship Program and the ideas of why we're doing this, and which I've tried to just lay out in quite a few words as compared to the book. In the book, you will also find critical analysis of what we're doing, because we have had professors, university professors, visiting us for longer periods of time, interviewing our students, interviewing our teachers, and interviewing management also. Assistant professor at the University of Southern Denmark, Sten Beck, which is in Denmark at least, quite famous for his work on pedagogics, has observed many lessons on global citizenship. We have had assistant professor at Roskilde University, Louise Tranekær, visiting us for a period of 3 years, working especially with intercultural understanding. And then we have had Professor Emeritus Michael Byram, whom many of you probably know, helping us with the book, and also giving us critical feedback on the program as a whole. And just to finish off, a few words about the challenges of implementing GCED program. First of all, it's very important to stress that I find this to be necessary, that we do need to take steps in this direction, which I think I share with most of you, in the direction of teaching global citizenship in one way or another. Maybe not as we have done it here. I think actually that's a point. You cannot do it exactly the way that other schools are doing it, but some steps need to be taken all across the globe. But once you decide that, you will probably find out that the implementation is not easy. At least at Rysenstein, we found out that the different stakeholders, and I've divided them into 4 categories, can be quite difficult to work with. First of all, we had the students, and many of them, they understood the idea, but at the same time, being Danish students, they were extremely critical of some of the things that we did in the beginning. And from a management point of view, it's quite interesting that they wanted the program to be established via grassroots democratic decisions all the time, and that's fair. It's a very, but it's also a very idealistic point of view. And if you want to move it along, I think sometimes you also need management to say, now we do this, and then we'll talk about how we do it, but not if we're going to do it. The students more or less were on board from the beginning critical, but on board. Parents, however, we saw, they could be quite critical of what we were doing, because a question that I have experienced many times, at least during the first year of the Global Citizenship Program, and that I've heard from many teachers around the globe, is that they said, but what about the basic competences? And what about reading, writing, math, and so on? And not least, what about their grades? Will this in any way affect their grades in a negative manner? Because we're worried that that our children will not get into universities. So I think in Denmark we've experienced problems, and I'm quite certain that in countries with an even stronger focus on testing, you can run into quite a lot of issues with the parents in them being very skeptical about the implementation. The idea for us and the way we work with them was to try to bring them into the program. We had meetings with them. We still do every year, especially when it comes to the students traveling. But then we also use the opportunity once they're here to tell them about the program, how much the students learn, and also tell them that this will not, as we understand it, compromise their opportunities in a very competitive global workplace. This will actually enhance their opportunities. So there are ways to go about it, but it's not necessarily easy. And we had the teachers also, and some of the teachers were quite stressed and quite worried about teaching this. Now they were very comfortable about teaching the subjects as they were taught the subjects at university level. But then they said, I am not comfortable in teaching this cohort, which is going to Singapore. I don't know anything about Singapore. So some of them were on board right away, but others had to be convinced. And to be honest, we have also had teachers leaving us because they were not interested in this. They just wanted to teach in the more traditional manner. And then I think most importantly, we also had the politicians. Now in Denmark, we are, as I stated before, quite lucky in the way that the politicians, they keep their distance in some ways, at least. They keep their distance in the sense that they let the teachers decide to a very large extent the content of what they're teaching. It's not decided from from the ministry, for example, exactly what you need to teach in English literature or in Danish literature and history. It is more like a framework, and then you fill this in. That helped us, but still, we have also experienced that some of them ask us, what about the exams and so on. And I know from, again, teachers and school leaders in other countries that this pressure from the politicians is even stronger in other countries. I have very good friends in both Korea and China, and they've told me that this can be very, very difficult to kind of convince politicians who are mostly focused on exams, maybe because they think this is the way to keep the level of education and thereby also the financial growth or the economic growth rate up and so on, and maybe less inclined to focus on those softer aspects of education. But I think the way to go about it, if you really want to convince them, is to also let them know that this global citizenship is in many ways an altruistic project, but it's not only an altruistic project. I do believe that global citizenship education will also enhance the students' own opportunities when it comes to further education and careers. And that is basically it for me now. So that was just a few words in our book, and now I think we have 15 minutes left for Q&A. Oh. Yeah, very good question. Yeah. So how can I start? I mean, let me start by the criticism that we have faced, at least from more right-wing politicians, is that you cannot talk about global citizenship because because you're not a citizen of the world, meaning that you do not have specific responsibilities and you do not have privileges given by a global state. You can only have them in your own country. So, without exhausting the topic fully, I would just say that for me, it has to do with uh, knowledge, as I started about knowledge about the world, but also this sense that I do belong to the world, and I do have maybe not a legal responsibility, but I do have a moral responsibility to the rest of the world. And also that if I want my family to succeed and to also in 50 years have the life that I hope that they will have. This is very closely connected to people in other parts of the world also having a better life at that time. And again, I'm not exhausting this by any means because it would take longer time, but I think a very central concept in this will be empathy, border crossing empathy, which I think is extremely difficult to facilitate, but is also extremely important because that is very closely connected to the sense of being a citizen that belongs to the globe and is connected to the rest of the world. How do you get children who need to be involved for their own development but who are not interested? Yeah, so as I understand is that they're not necessarily interested from the beginning, but they're mostly in it from their own sake, if I understand it correctly. Um, yeah, that's very difficult, and all I can say is that we will try to bring them in situations where they 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 will find the motivation. And I can tell you one thing is that once they meet young people from other parts of the world, then they understand how similar they are, but also how different they are in some ways. It's mostly there we find students who from the beginning said, I'm not really interested in that, to be very interested afterwards, and very motivated. So I think, if we're talking about motivation, if I understand it correctly, it's about getting them out of the classrooms and into the real world, and then most people will find an interest in this. Yeah, yeah. So I think that's a very, very good question, and I think also it totally depends on the system, or and thereby also the country, because I know from some of our American partners that it seems to be very much easier in private gymnasiums or high schools because they have more freedom. Whereas in the Danish system, we have exactly the same freedoms as the private system. For me, the most important thing and the the reason that it has been possible here at Rusenstein High School is because we have quite a lot of freedom from testing and so on. It's not that we don't do testing, of course, and we have to, but we have freedom to here at the school to decide that we want to focus on global citizenship. If you don't have that, if you are obliged or you're forced to by the ministry to only focus on testing, multiple choice testing even, then it becomes very difficult, even if you have the best of intentions, to break off with that. So global citizenship for me is very the possibility of working with it is very closely linked to the willingness of the politicians, of course.
Thank you for that presentation. I know there's a lot that we would have learned, and thank you for answering the questions. Maybe I could ask one final question. Do you think it's better to implement this in lower grades, for example, primary schools, or can it still work when you implement it in universities, colleges, and higher
That
levels of institutions?
that's a very good question also. I think in oh, there's a little bit of echo. I don't know. I think certainly it can work, and I think it does work when we work with it here at Rosenstein. But I do also think when it comes to you know an basic outlook you have on life, on people who do not necessarily look like yourself and so on. Of course, the earlier you can influence people, the better it is. But there are also nuances to a very complex world that you cannot introduce to people when they're very young. I mean, that's simply not possible. So I think it also depends on on what you're working with. For us, it's also important that our students understand that the world is complex and there are no simple answers to most of the very, very difficult questions and issues that we're facing. It's very difficult to find very, very simple answers. Doesn't mean that we're not going to look for the answers, but they're not necessarily very simple. Those dilemmas and those complex ways of viewing the world is very difficult to work with, or very difficult to work with younger children. But the basic outlook and the basic sense of not being prejudiced, for example, I think that will probably be better started when they're very young.
Thank you for that. I don't know if we have any more questions, but I don't think so. So thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe you would like to share your details for someone who would like to reach out to you, maybe a social
Of
media
course, you're
page.
more than welcome. Is it here? I will just put it here. This is my
You can just send it on the chat.
email. Here you go. There. Is that okay?
Yes. Thank you once again. And it was really lovely to have you. We have learned a lot. Thank you for your work, and thank you for taking the time
Thank you
to
so much
join us
for.
and to lead us.
Thank you
Yes.
so much.
And thank you all our audiences for joining
Bye.
us. And we were very glad to have you all. Yes. See you in the closing sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much.